The NBA environment feels tense. The past few weeks have reshaped the league's chessboard, and one of the teams most affected by this transformation is the Golden State Warriors. More than 30 days have passed since the free agency market opened, and the Californian front office still has not made any major signings. The general feeling is that something must change urgently. Fans are waiting for a turning point, a bold decision capable of reigniting the competitive spirit that defined the franchise's golden era. The message is clear. Stephen Curry needs a roster worthy of his genius. Even with experienced pillars like Curry, Draymond Green, and the newly acquired Jimmy Butler, the structure of the team still feels incomplete. Depth is missing, and so are alternative solutions for a demanding schedule. Rumors of small additions circulate. Names like Al Horford and DeAnthony Melton appear in conversations, but the consensus among analysts is that such moves would be merely temporary fixes. The gap separating Golden State from the real title contenders demands something far more drastic. A bold play, a move that could redefine the franchise's path. It's within this context that an idea dividing opinions has emerged, bringing Zion Williamson, the New Orleans Pelicans star, to California. The proposed deal is straightforward. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody would head to New Orleans in exchange for Williamson and a 2031 second-round draft pick, a high-risk, high-reward transaction, the kind of decision that can either transform a season or jeopardize an entire project. The central dilemma revolves around Jonathan Kuminga. The 22-year-old is a developing talent who, however, seems not to have found a clear role under the current coaching staff. His frustration behind the scenes is well known. The possibility of using him as the main trade asset is not only logical but necessary given the internal tensions. A deal of this magnitude could redefine the Warriors' playing style, revitalizing both their defense and offense. When healthy, Zion Williamson is a physical phenomenon. His impact is immediate. At 25, he combines strength, explosiveness, and agility like few others in the league. His presence in the paint completely alters the dynamics of any game. Last season, even limited by injuries, he averaged 24.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, and 5.3 assists, star-level numbers that, when he's available, raise the entire team's performance. Within Golden State's system, Zion would act as a catalyst. His aggressiveness near the rim would create space for Curry to attack from the perimeter freely. Butler, with his mid-range game, would benefit from the chaos Williamson causes by drawing multiple defenders. The team, which in recent years has struggled with lack of penetration and physical presence in the paint, would gain a new offensive dimension. Every attack could become unpredictable. Moreover, his strength on the boards would solve one of the team's biggest weaknesses. Though not a traditional center, Zion has enough leaping ability and positioning sense to compete with taller players. That would mean more possessions, more second-chance points, and consequently greater control of the game's tempo, a decisive resource in tight playoff matches. The 2031 second-round pick included in the offer would serve as a strategic detail, minor on paper but useful for future trades or discovering hidden talent in the draft. Every asset counts in a plan that aims for balance between the present and the future. For the Pelicans, the deal would make practical sense. Williamson's departure would free financial and emotional space. In return, acquiring Kuminga and Moody would bring youth and potential. Kuminga, in particular, sparks curiosity. His athletic profile and defensive energy make him a player who could flourish with more minutes and freedom. In New Orleans, he would have the protagonism he never fully enjoyed in San Francisco. Last season, he averaged 15.3 points and 4.6 rebounds, modest numbers that reflect efficiency in limited time. With an expanded role, he could evolve into a complete player with two-way impact. His straightforward style and physical durability contrast with the fragility that has marked Zion's career. For the Pelicans, it would be a trade for stability. Moses Moody, 23, is another underrated name. A reliable shooter, disciplined, and adaptable to different roles. His 9.8 points per game and 37% three-point accuracy reveal a player ready to grow. In New Orleans, he could become a key piece of the second unit, providing spacing and defensive solidity. Another curious element is that both would reunite with former teammates now in the Pelicans, Jordan Poole and Kevon Looney, which could ease their immediate adaptation. Pre-existing locker room relationships often accelerate team chemistry, a vital factor in any rebuilding process. Still, it's undeniable that the greater risk falls on Golden State. Zion Williamson carries a worrying medical history. Repeated injuries and long absences raise doubts about his durability. Over 3 seasons, he has played only 129 games. For a franchise seeking stability and sustained competitiveness, that represents a risky gamble. The Warriors' front office would therefore have to build a personalized medical and fitness structure. Ensuring that Zion maintains ideal weight and conditioning would be a top priority. If they succeed, the potential is enormous. A rejuvenated roster and a central trio, combining leadership, intensity, and pure talent. But if the injuries persist, the project could collapse before taking shape. Across the NBA, the rumor of this trade is already sparking discussion. Executives analyze the potential impact such a move would have on the Western Conference. Curry, Butler, and Williamson on the same team would be an immediate threat. The contrast between Curry's cerebral style and Zion's raw power would create an offense few opponents could guard efficiently. At the same time, for the Pelicans, letting go of their star would be painful, but possibly liberating. Since being the first overall pick in the 2019 draft, Zion has embodied both hope and frustration in equal measure. His talent was never questioned, but his constant absences eroded the fans' and management's confidence. Kuminga represents a new beginning, an athlete hungry, energetic, and unburdened by unrealistic expectations. Moody would complement this new core with tactical intelligence and balance. The team would gain depth and a more predictable horizon, less spectacle, more consistency. For the NBA, the trade would be a milestone, a reminder that even powerhouses must reinvent themselves, that past success guarantees nothing for the future. Golden State would be betting big, trying to extend the Curry era with a risky chess move. The Pelicans, meanwhile, would choose patience and gradual rebuilding. This dichotomy, boldness versus prudence, is what makes the proposal so fascinating. If the deal were to go through, the impact would be immediate. Social media would explode, sports analysts would revisit their predictions, and the Warriors' locker room would take on a different atmosphere. The arrival of Zion Williamson would bring not only new tactical possibilities, but also a redefinition of what Golden State represents. The franchise has always prided itself on a collective style built on movement, passing, and intelligence. Now, it would incorporate an element of power and verticality. It would be the fusion of two worlds, the basketball of elegance and the basketball of physical impact. Steve Kerr would face a monumental challenge, adapting a system that has always revolved around lightness and spacing to accommodate a player who thrives on physical imposition. Zion is not a specialist in off-ball movement or floor spacing. He needs space to attack the rim and the ball in his hands to dominate. The coach would have to redesign schemes, balance roles, and ensure that Curry retains his freedom. It's a delicate balance, but if executed well, it could turn Golden State into one of the most versatile offenses in recent NBA history. On an emotional level, the presence of Jimmy Butler would serve as a bridge between generations. He is the kind of player who demands commitment. He does not tolerate distractions or forgive a lack of effort. His influence in the locker room would be vital in shaping Zion's mindset. Butler is disciplined, methodical, and fiercely competitive. If he can inspire Williamson to maintain focus and physical discipline, the impact would be enormous. He would act as a mentor, a mirror of what it takes to become a champion at the highest level. For Stephen Curry, the arrival of a dominant partner inside the paint would be a relief. In recent seasons, he has carried the team through many moments, performing above expectations even with an inconsistent roster. With Zion, he could conserve energy, alternate roles, and better explore his brilliance without relying so heavily on contested shots. Williamson's mere presence would force defenses to collapse, freeing up the perimeter so Curry could do what he does best, punish with surgical precision. Defensively, the change would also be significant. Despite his lack of height, Zion has enough body strength and leaping ability to guard centers in switch situations. His athleticism would allow Golden State to maintain hybrid defensive schemes, alternating between zone and man-to-man without losing intensity. Alongside Draymond Green, he would form a physical, aggressive, and experienced defensive core. This duo could dictate transition pace, something that has historically defined the Warriors' success. But this ideal scenario depends on a fragile variable: health. No tactic, however ingenious, can withstand long absences. Golden State would need to protect its investment. Nutritionists, physiologists, and trainers would have to work in perfect coordination. Zion would require constant monitoring. It's a symbiotic relationship. The player must fully trust the club's structure, and the club must believe the player is committed to longevity. At the same time, the Pelicans would find in Kuminga and Moody a breath of renewal. Under a system less dependent on a single star, the team could develop multiple offensive weapons. Brandon Ingram, for instance, would have the freedom to take on more creative responsibilities, while Kuminga would add explosiveness and elite defense. The coach would have a flexible roster, capable of playing at high speed and switching formations without losing competitiveness. This flexibility is something New Orleans has always sought but never consolidated. Since Zion's arrival, the team has lived between hope and frustration. Moments of brilliance were followed by long absences. The project that was supposed to grow around a central figure became unstable. The trade, therefore, would represent not just a sporting decision, but a psychological release. The team would leave behind the shadow of dependence and move toward a more collective model. Meanwhile, the Warriors would be taking a gamble to rekindle global fascination. Since the end of their dominant era, the team has maintained a legion of fans, but also a lingering sense of nostalgia. The bet on Zion would reignite interest, generate headlines, sell tickets, and move the market. Each game would be a spectacle of possibilities: the visionary veteran, the relentless competitor, and the young prodigy in search of redemption. The impact on the conference would be immediate. Rivals like Denver, Minnesota, and Oklahoma would have to reorganize. The Warriors' style, already unpredictable by nature, would become even harder to defend. The combination of quick passes and explosive drives would create a multifaceted offense. Opposing defenses would be forced into impossible choices: close the paint and open the perimeter, or pressure Curry and allow Zion space to attack. For fans, the narrative would be irresistible. On one side, a legendary icon trying to extend his dynasty. On the other, a young talent trying to prove he can still be great, both on the same journey, in search of redemption and legacy. It's the kind of storyline that transcends statistics and stirs deep emotions. Sports thrive on stories, and this would be one of the most intriguing of the decade. However, the financial background cannot be ignored. Zion's contract is heavy. Golden State would have to adjust its payroll, give up flexibility, and possibly pay high luxury taxes. It's the price of ambition. The front office would need to balance immediate pressure with medium-term sustainability. Betting everything on a fragile talent is dangerous, but standing still is just as risky. Kuminga and Moody, with lighter contracts, represent stability and flexibility. That's why the Pelicans see the deal as advantageous. They could expand their roster, test young lineups, and plan for the future with calm. The focus would shift from survival to development. If recent NBA history teaches anything, it's that great triumphs require courage. When Golden State brought in Kevin Durant in 2016, it broke conventions and redefined the league. Now, with Curry already cemented as one of the greatest of all time, the club faces a similar choice: trade security for risk, the past for a new vision, comfort for a new flame. This narrative gains even more strength when viewed in the global basketball context. The sport is in transition, and new figures are beginning to emerge. One of them is Kai Soto, the Filipino center drawing attention in Japan's B-League. In his last game, he recorded 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists against the Kyoto Hanaris, showing maturity and efficiency. Bit by bit, Kai is becoming a symbol of the new Asian basketball, skilled, disciplined, and emotionally ready for big stages. His statistical growth is steady. He is a few games away from reaching the 1,000-point mark in the league, has already surpassed 500 rebounds, and is approaching 100 assists. These numbers are not just personal milestones, they're signs of an evolving athlete. Kai's style, which blends solid fundamentals with game intelligence, invites comparisons to legendary centers. His potential is global, and inevitably, the NBA is watching. Warriors fans have already expressed interest in seeing him on the team. For a franchise seeking versatility and cost efficiency, Kai Soto would be a smart investment. Young, tall, and adaptable, he could contribute as a complementary piece, especially in defensive rotations. He would be a low-risk, high-reward addition, exactly the type of player Golden State needs to balance its roster after a major trade. Kai's potential presence, even if speculative, brings another form of hope. While Zion would represent the explosive gamble, Kai would symbolize patient construction, a balance between the now and the future. And it's precisely this duality that defines the Warriors' moment, urgency and vision. The franchise stands at a crossroads. If they go for Zion, they choose the path of boldness and spectacle. If they seek safer alternatives, they follow the road of patience and rebuilding. Neither path is without risk, but both reflect the same principle that has guided the team over the last decade: the courage to attempt the impossible. In the end, what's at stake is more than a player. It's the soul of an organization that built an era and now fights not to become just a memory. Golden State's next move will decide whether the flame of its dynasty is reignited or fades slowly under the weight of its own success. What defines a dynasty is not merely the number of titles won, but the ability to reinvent itself over time. And once again, the Golden State Warriors stand before that mirror. The clock is ticking, opportunities are fading, and the league is transforming rapidly. While young franchises like Oklahoma City, Houston, and Minnesota rise with energy, the team from San Francisco must prove that it remains relevant in an era where the speed of change punishes hesitation. The front office observes the landscape with strategic detachment. The market is stagnant, and viable impact options are scarce. Bringing in Zion Williamson would be a way to break inertia and send a message to the NBA. Golden State still plays to win, not merely to survive, but the most powerful message would come from within, the reminder that the time for transition is over and that the pursuit of a new era of success must begin now. Jimmy Butler plays a central role in this new culture. His arrival represents not just technical reinforcement, but also a shift in mentality. Butler is the kind of player who redefines a locker room. He demands the maximum from everyone, including himself. His discipline could be the missing factor needed to transform potential into results. Alongside Curry, he forms a dual leadership. One inspires through silent genius, the other through brutal intensity. They complement each other and together can create the perfect environment for Zion to flourish without distractions. But the challenge of merging distinct styles is monumental. Curry thinks the game with fluidity. Butler operates with mental toughness and a measured rhythm. Zion is pure explosion. Reconciling these natures will require not only technique, but humility. Success will depend on concessions. Zion will need to learn to play off the ball in certain moments. Butler will have to open space for the physical brilliance of his new teammate, and Curry will need to reinvent his movement to amplify the trio's synergy. This convergence of talents could result in something historic, or in a collapse of egos and systems. Behind the scenes, the coaching staff is already studying adjustments. The idea would be to maintain the philosophy of offensive movement while incorporating more vertical plays to exploit Zion's power when attacking the rim. Kerr and his staff are analyzing advanced statistics to identify efficiency zones and possible new formations. The goal is simple: to build a hybrid offense that unites Curry's mind with Williamson's body. If successful, Golden State will once again become unpredictable, and that has always been its greatest weapon. Defensively, the combination of Draymond Green and Zion would be a spectacle of energy and strength. Green, with his tactical intelligence, would cover Williamson's occasional positional lapses, while the young star would bring power and presence inside the paint. This duo could restore the solidity that marked the team's championship campaigns. The automatic switching system would regain efficiency, and the defensive transition would become more aggressive. Meanwhile, the Pelicans would reorganize quietly. The arrival of Kuminga and Moody would mark a new era, less dependent on fragile stars and more focused on collective evolution. Kuminga would be unleashed to exploit his strength and speed. Moody, with his consistent shooting, would open up the court. Ingram would remain the reference point, but without the burden of being the lone offensive option. It would mark the birth of a modern team, young, athletic, and disciplined. Behind the scenes in New Orleans, once defined by uncertainty and anxiety, there would finally be lightness. Zion's departure would close a chapter of unfulfilled expectations and allow the start of a more rational project. The fans, though divided, would begin to see a sustainable future. Kuminga's name would come to symbolize hope, and Moody's balance. Both would bring the kind of energy that fuels successful rebuilding processes. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, the impact would be immediate. Zion would arrive surrounded by spotlights. He would be presented as the new bet of a franchise unafraid of the impossible. The media would speculate endlessly. Analysts would debate whether the gamble was worth the risk. Cameras would follow every practice, every expression, every behind-the-scenes movement. The pressure would be immense, but so would the opportunity for collective rebirth. Williamson would have to prove himself, not only as a player but as a professional, to demonstrate physical commitment, maturity, and a winning mentality, to show he can be more than flashes of promise. For him, it would be the chance to rewrite his story. For Golden State, the opportunity to extend the Curry era for a few more years of prominence. The success of this move, however, would not be measured solely in victories. It would lie in the franchise's ability to reclaim its identity. Golden State has always been more than a basketball team. It has been an idea. The idea that intelligence can defeat power, that teamwork can surpass individuality, and that beauty can coexist with efficiency. If handled well, Zion's arrival would not destroy that essence. It could amplify it. It would show that evolution is possible without losing one's soul. Kai Soto, hailed by many as the future of Asian basketball, emerges as a parallel symbol of this transition. His growth in the B-League draws attention from scouts and fans alike. And it is no coincidence that the Warriors, historically pioneers in integrating international talent, are viewed as the ideal destination. The franchise that once opened the NBA to new ideas could now open doors to a new continent of talent. The prospect of seeing Kai sharing practice sessions with Curry and Williamson would be a global fascination. The contrast between Zion and Kai would be emblematic. One represents raw power that must be controlled. The other, discipline waiting to be tested on grand stages. Together, they would symbolize the balance that defines modern success: strength and wisdom, present and future, passion and patience. This narrative could propel Golden State not only in results, but in global relevance. Time will tell whether this bold move will be remembered as brilliance or madness. Great achievements always arise from extreme decisions. In 2014, few believed that a team built on long-range shooting would dominate the league. Golden State proved otherwise. Now, a decade later, history may repeat itself in a new form. A team blending intellect, intensity, and instinct. If Zion stays healthy, if Butler maintains his leadership, and if Curry remains the axis of wisdom, Golden State could relive the glow of its greatest nights. The stands would roar again. The Chase Center would recover its dormant fire, and world basketball would gain a new story to tell. The story of an empire that refused to die. Even with all the risk, basketball teaches one lesson better than any other sport. There is no victory without vulnerability. The greatest stories are written by those who dare to defy destiny. Golden State may fail, but failing while daring is far nobler than being paralyzed by the fear of change. Curry, Butler, and Zion. 3 names, 3 paths, 1 mission, to prove that the flame of greatness still burns. The NBA, long awaiting a new revolution, may once again witness the rebirth of the improbable. And on the horizon, silently, Kai Soto continues to rise. His consistent and promising numbers bring him ever closer to the elite. If he one day wears the blue and gold jersey, it will be more than a signing. It will be confirmation that basketball is an endless cycle, and that reinvention is not a choice, but the destiny of those born to win. Thus, the Golden State Warriors prepare to turn the page. Between risk and possibility, the franchise rediscovers the spirit that made it legendary, the courage to dream big. Because in the end, the game always belongs to those bold enough to believe they can change everything with a single move. And so the story reaches its most intense point. The Golden State Warriors, before the mirror of their own greatness, must choose between the safety of the past and the risk of the future. Zion Williamson could be the spark that reignites the fire, or the gamble that plunges everything into uncertainty. Jimmy Butler brings the mentality, Stephen Curry brings the light, and the franchise, once again, puts everything on the line to prove it can still defy the impossible. Every NBA season is a new chance to be reborn. What Golden State is about to do is not just a trade, it is a declaration of faith in its own legacy. Whether by brilliance or madness, this is the essence of those who change the game, daring when everyone doubts, believing when the world no longer believes. If you want to follow every step of this possible revolution, don't miss the next chapter. Here, every detail matters, every rumor carries weight, and every play can change history. Leave your like right now, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any updates on the future of the Warriors, the impact of Zion Williamson, and the rise of Kai Soto. Your support is the fuel that keeps this work alive and ensures that we continue bringing deep analysis, exclusive insights, and stories that go far beyond the court. Because in the end, basketball is more than a sport. It is about courage, reinvention, and legacy. And the Golden State Warriors are about to prove once again that legends never disappear. They simply change form.